Hi, this is Shipper Hendry. Um, I it's about an hour before Shabbat, and I am in a home of some very dear friends in Pittsburgh with a lot of other people. So I want to make this as quick as I can. So I want to start by talking about something I've been hearing lately. I've been listening to somebody who's broadcasting from Israel. Didn't know him before. Very interesting guy who is kind of doing several times a week talks on the situation, on the ins and outs, on a little bit about the politics, a little bit about the financial, a little bit about the health, and about this what's going on in Israeli society, what's going on in the world. He's pretty interesting. And the thing that he's saying that I'm finding the most um, interesting, reinforcing, important in a way, and that's because not too many people are saying it, but I totally believe it to be true, is that we are meant to be upgrading as a species. Each one of us is meant to be changing, really like a caterpillar changing to a butterfly. There's another version of us that is destined for us that we will step into. We have these stories that the people who have near death experiences, or people come back, go back and past life through past life regression or whatever, or the mystical stories that we're told, the saints and sages. We're told that there is another state of consciousness that happens after people pass away. Even the stories, I've met people, and you probably have met people as well, maybe you're one of them, who went through what we call near death experience, an NDE, where the person's consciousness rises up above their body and maybe, wanders from room to room, observes what's on the desk, hears what people are saying, sees the environment, and can report it afterwards with total clarity. And there's no explanation for it because, in fact, they were lying unconscious on a bed. Or stories of people who go into a higher state, again, often in near death experiences, who will experience intense love, like that tunnel story. I met someone quite interesting many years ago who, when she was young and right out of the army, she was meeting her fiance and standing under a tall building where there was construction going on, and a giant two by four fell off the construction site and landed on her head. And she, of course, was knocked out, lying on the ground, and again was there to meet her fiance who hadn't showed up yet. And she described to me, and also in her book, that her awareness rose up above her body. We've all heard these stories. And she was looking down at the scene from above, and she saw people surrounding her, very concerned, very worried. And her body was lying there. And yet, where was she? She wasn't disconnected from her body because she was right there, but she was observing it. And then she talked about, at that point, she had that tunnel experience. She went deep into the light. She saw a light and felt a light that she said was full of love. And it was a love that she hadn't experienced in real life, a combination of the love of a parent, the love of a spouse, the love of a child, a best friend, and far, far, far more than that, infinite unconditional love. This is an experience that she had. I'm going somewhere with this. And she reviewed her life. She saw everything that she had done, everything that she had failed to do, everything that she wished she had done differently. And she was given a choice. This apparently doesn't always happen, but she was given a choice whether to go into the light, which she deeply wanted to do, or go back. And she thought about her fiance. Again, I heard this from this person herself. She thought about her fiance and what he would feel like if she didn't show up. And also, she thought about the fact that she had missed so many opportunities and that there was still so much that she had originally come down to do. So she chose to go back into her body. And one of the many things she's accomplished is telling the story, writing the story, and telling the story. In fact, once I talked to her personally, but then later on, she actually spoke in Brooklyn, told the story to a group of people, and the woman right next to me started to shake and said, "That happened to me. That happened to me." Okay, so what is that? And what are the experiences that we read about where lights colors are brighter, like they're colors, people describe colors that they haven't seen, the human spectrum of light doesn't allow them to see that everything has a kind of crystal clarity that's indescribable, that's not of this world, that there's a peace that again is indescribable, that normally we can't experience. These are examples of higher consciousness experiences. They're the tip of the iceberg. Ultimately, the Torah tells us, where are we going? What are we here for? What are we here to facilitate? What is redemption made of? A core foundation of it is a higher consciousness that goes way beyond anything that I've just described, anything that most of us have yet experienced. It's described as seeing eye to eye with God, as an intimate partnership with the Creator. Impossible really to imagine from this place. Sorry, this is just, my phone is plugged in. There was babies crying a few minutes ago. It just is what it is. I am where I am, so they'll stop soon, hopefully. Anyway, the idea is that we are in a process. We've been in a long process since creation began, the process of transformation, of metamorphosis from one state, really an artificially imposed state of smallness, of contracted consciousness, of short physical lifespan, which is riddled with issues and problems, with obsolescence. I don't have to describe it to you. The world, we've been in this bubble, or sometimes I like to think of it as a snow globe, that keeps us held into this tiny space. I once was in a healing session. I had a vision. I was the subject of the healing. The teacher was doing a session on me. And in that session, I had a vision of all of humanity. It looked like one of those medieval pictures where everyone's tangled up around each other. Maybe it's like Dante's Inferno, I don't know, with their mouths open, like kind of screaming in agony and no space to move. And in that session, I just had this vision. It wasn't my experience, but I had the vision, and it was this, my own voice was saying to me, like, it was clear to me within the session. It's not clear to me now, but it was clear to me within the session that all they had to do was stop, stand up and get out of there, and it would all be over. All that suffering, all that horror. And in the vision, I'm like saying, like, why don't we just get out? Why don't we just like walk away? Why don't we leave it? And yet in our human life, God is constructing this snow globe that we're all caught in, or feel like we're caught in, have been caught in for several millennia now, constructing it in order, like a chicken in an egg, like a caterpillar in a cocoon. Sorry if these metaphors are getting boring, but they're so essential that I'm going to keep repeating them. We're caught in this constricted space that's getting more and more constricted, more and more entangled, more and more like that, for a purpose. And that is because there's a developmental stage in all human and animal, all life processes. There's a developmental stage that requires some kind of a cocoon. I mean, I don't want to wax eloquent on this, but you can see it even when a nut grows inside of a shell. This is a deep Kabbalistic concept as well, that there's a protective outer layer that allows for development. Oh man, that would not be able to occur. Sorry for the sound effects. That would not be able to occur if there was not this enclosed, safe and constricting space. Safe and constricting have meant the same thing. Okay, that said, we are destined, we are moving to another state of human evolution. That's without a doubt. And the process, just like in those examples that I described, the process involves increasing constriction as the space in which we've been navigating, in which we've been developing, is getting too small for us. It's getting the questions that we have, to coin a famous phrase, the questions that we have are bigger than the answers that we have. And the chaos that's being generated as a result is not designed to break us down. It is designed to free us, to help us to let go of our unquestioned assumptions that this is all that there is, that this is all that I am, that what I see is the ultimate reality, that the structures and systems that have been cultivated, that have existed as the kind of the core nature of our multi-generational human experience, that's the best that we can do, that's the way it's supposed to be, that's where we should put our trust, that's what we should build a future on. And that's why people keep talking about wanting to go back to normal, because that seems like the best we can do. Compared to this, that was pretty good. But compared to where we're going, just let me get out of this cocoon and start crawling along the ground again. Yeah, sometimes there's a dearth of leaves and I go a little hungry. Sometimes it rains on me a lot. Sometimes my little caterpillar legs start to hurt because I'm walking too much. But, compared to this, it's good. I just want to go back. You can't go back. You can't go back. And that's a core theme. Now, that's a core truth that we must absorb. As somebody said to me last night, I actually didn't mean for this life to go quite this way, but I'm in a personal state of turmoil a lot of the time because we left Israel on March 8th to visit our children, the new babies that we hadn't seen, and older babies that we had not seen for a while. And it was very difficult to get out of Israel. The borders were closed at the time. I'm not sure why, because they were closed not only going in, but going out. And it was just really difficult. And I'm American, and I, never imagined a time when a government would say, you can't get on a plane and leave, you have to stay here. I thought we ended that a long time ago when the, Soviet Union fell apart. But nevertheless, that was what was happening. And so it was really traumatic for us. And we're still visiting family, we're still visiting friends, we still have things to do here. But I constantly think about, when am I going back to Israel? Why am I not back in Israel yet? I miss it tremendously, especially Jerusalem. I miss it, and I'm missing it more and more. And yet there's a reason for the wandering. So in Sukkot, what brings me to the holiday of Sukkot, I'm going to really try to speed this up because then somebody just keeps calling me. During the process of redemption, Sukkot commemorates the festival of booths. It commemorates the wandering in the desert that the Jewish people, the souls of Israel, did for 40 years. There was an in-between period of time between the exodus from Egypt, which was a process as well, which came with the 10 plagues and all kinds of fanfare and all kinds of, ultimately divine revelations. And by the way, when Moses first came to redeem the people, God sent him directly, the burning bush and all that. So things got worse. Things got a lot worse. They didn't get better. The constriction got tighter. This is a paradigm. This is a fractal. It's a theme. You have to know it. At least know it. Then we know what to do with it. Knowing it is the first stage to understand what the process is about. So when finally the Jews walked in the Chatzos Halayla, the stroke of midnight, with the last plague of the killing of the firstborn, and the souls of Israel walked out following Moses with whatever they could carry there and their animals. And, the Egyptians were like, we see God's with us. Take this jewel, take this, this dress, take. And they couldn't carry anymore. And they walked on their feet with tambourines because they were, they were ready for the redemption. They were celebrating the entry into the promised land. And instead of taking, and then immediately, or almost immediately, they were at the sea and the Egyptians were following them and they were under threat again. Long story. But it ended up taking, instead of just a short period of time, even walking, it should have only taken, I've heard 3 months, maybe there are other opinions. It ended up taking 40 years. Why? 40 is the number of transformation. 40 years were required for an evolutionary process that was an essential intermediate stage between slavery in Egypt and freedom in the land of Israel. Likewise, this is a prototype, this is a fractal. We are now in an intermediate stage between attachment to exile, to gullus, to the human condition. We couldn't have gotten out until it was time to get out, just like a baby can't be born until it's time for it to be born, or it's not going to be okay, right? You cannot cut, there's a story about somebody who cut the cocoon off the caterpillar, up the butterfly, and because it had not squeezed the liquid out of its wings, it was never able to fly. Is that true or not? I don't know. Maybe it's a metaphor. I suspect it is what would happen if you cut the cocoon off a butterfly. Things have to take their time. There's a divine process and it has to happen. You can make it happen faster, especially we, because we're conscious, but we can't avoid it. So this intermediate stage of the 40 years in the desert was to erase all of the connection, the allegiance, the brain wiring, the attraction to Egyptian slavery, and to inculcate a new mentality that would be necessary to exist and to thrive as free people, but carriers of the Torah in the promised land, in the Holy Land. So what happened was a filtering process where, there were a lot of mistakes start with the golden calf, and then people were filtered out. A lot of people ended up dying, many different events, many different lessons. And even when, whoever was left still entered the land of Israel, that process continued. But the core process of the 40 years was to erase the allegiance, the attachment to exile and slavery, and to open up a new relationship with God that would facilitate redemption as an ongoing permanent building process. So part of that was the miraculous, the manna from heaven, the man, that appeared every day, and that was collected, that came from heaven. The desert, and especially wandering in the desert, there was no possibility of tilling land and growing and building houses. It wasn't that kind of a life. It was a wandering life. I'm relating to this very much because, for whatever reason, some of it I can start to understand a little bit. Most of it I probably don't understand. I got this. For whatever reason, we've been wandering. It's not that we came to the US and, we got a nice little place and we're having a nice little life there until we go back. No, we ultimately had to buy a car because rental prices went up too much, and we were on our fifth month of renting, and it was prohibitive, more than my apartment cost in Israel. And we're still moving from place to place. We've been from New York to Pennsylvania to Chicago to Florida to Utah to South Dakota, now to, back to Pennsylvania, now to Pittsburgh. So anyway, and we're not done. And why is that? And as I said before, I keep almost agonizing. Oh, well, why? When am I going back to Israel? Why am I not going back to Israel yet? And the best answer I can come up with is I'm not. It's not time. I'm not ready. And yet I cannot settle here. I know I'm not supposed to settle here. I don't want to settle here. Yes, I am going to try to get an apartment for a short period of time, because it's enough of like living in a car with everything that basically most of what we own is in Israel, but whatever we're using, and every time we buy something, it's got to fit in the car, and then it's got to come in and out every time we stop somewhere. Sometimes it's for a night. I'm really relating to this process. But here's what I want to say. The sukkah, the process of sukkahs, we dwell, we eat, some people sleep in these booths that are made usually of wood or canvas. And the most prominent feature of the sukkah is that it cannot have a solid roof. The roof is made of what's called schach, which is basically branches, leaves, bamboo, whatever it might be. And you have to be able to see a certain number of stars through the roof, which means by definition, it's not going to protect you from rain. It's not going to protect you from cold. It's not going to protect you from wind. In fact, my friends have a giant sukkah on the campus where they serve students, and part of the schach, the roof blew off, and so they're fixing it now. And why is that? Now, I want to quote Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, an amazing commentary. He talks about the final war. We're in the final war, guys. This is the final war of Gog and Magog. There are many prophecies about how that war could be fought, would be fought. Some of them are horrendous. Some of them are really specific. It's, there's a lot of mystery around who is Gog, who is Magog. What is that? Are they spiritual forces? Are they nations? Is it Russia? Is it this? Is it that? And there's no definitive answer to any of that. But what is definitive is that there are many ways that a prophecy can unfold. And so it can unfold in a very harsh way, God forbid, or it can unfold in a minimally harsh way, in a gentle way. Still, it seems that it's requiring a wake-up experience, just like the 40 years in the desert required people to learn from their mistakes, to inculcate themselves with a divine freedom, and to disconnect from the slavery and from the fears of the slavery. Okay, but so it's not that there's not a war, and war is by definition dangerous, but it seems to be the gentlest, kindest manner of the war, because there are not, in most places of the world, bullets flying all over the place. This is not the Dresden bombing. Hopefully it won't ever have to come to that. We have fear, as Rabbi Kessin once put it, or maybe more than once. We have fear of death, much more than we have death. So the whole world is gripped with fear. The whole world is not dying. Yes, way too many people have died. In my opinion, every day, way too many people have always died. I hate death. And part of this process is that that God promises that he will swallow up death forever. So in fact, the death toll is, despite the fear, the death toll basically doesn't seem to be significantly higher than it's been at any other time. But fear and the focus and the consequences that are flying from every direction are extremely accelerated, and that is putting the whole world in a state of conflict, terror, divisiveness, you name it. On Sukkot, now here's where I want to quote this incredible commentary. Sitting in the Sukkah, Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says that the war of Gog and Magog is not primarily a physical war, a military war, but rather, and he compares the word Gog, which is spelled Gimel Vav Gimel, with the word Gog, Gimel Gimel, which means roof. So the whole, as I said, the primary foundation of the Sukkah is that the roof is not solid. And it doesn't protect you from the elements. In the desert, we were protected, the Jews were protected by the clouds of glory, by God's presence, likewise in the sukkahs. He says that the sukkah, that the war is a war over the roof, and that to win this war, we have to let go of our inner need, our inner insistence, our inner dependence upon what we call the roof, like we say, a roof over our head. I've got to put a roof over my head, over my family's head. What is a roof? It is a solid structure. It's made out of wood, or it's made out of tiles, or it's made out of brick, or it's made out of stone, and it's designed to protect you from the elements, from the rain, from the wind, from maybe somebody, the robber, whatever we're trying to protect ourselves from. God should protect us from everything that's negative, but the roof is designed to protect us. But truthfully, it's an illusion. The people who were in Surfside, if you, I'm assuming you know about this. If you don't, a few months ago, when we were in Florida, and in that, whatever, a nice building. Yeah, after the fact, they said there were cracks in the foundation and then they hadn't been dealt with, whatever. But a nice, relatively new building, a luxury high rise where people were sleeping at 2 a.m. inside underneath their roof, in their cozy beds, totally safe, out of the hustle and bustle, out of the, all the threats of being outside in the world. All of a sudden, their building collapsed. And tragically and horrifically, there were many, many, many deaths. And that's kind of as shocking in a way as it gets, because where would you least expect to be in any danger when you're sleeping in on your solid floor, in your cozy bed, underneath your roof? So Rabbi Hirsch says that the war of Gog and Magog, the winning of the war of Gog and Magog, requires our letting go of the roof. What does that mean? That means that instead of putting our trust in solid structures, instead of putting our confidence in the fact that we can predict what's happening next, or that we can define our address and what is going to be next year and the year after, where we're going to get our sustenance from, what's going to happen with our governments, even the safety of our bodies. Again, what we're experiencing mostly is fear of death, fear of change, which is designed to catalyze a letting go of the roof, which puts us in a state of divine protection, the clouds of glory. So that instead of the experience in the desert, the wandering in the desert for 40 years was a miraculous experience. Again, food was provided miraculously. The clothes were cleaned by the cloud. They never had to have new clothes. There was total abundance in a place where life really couldn't exist, where life wasn't sustainable. And the period of chaos is part of the war. It's a war again for consciousness, to move from human consciousness, where we depend upon the external structures, where we trust the systems, where we are told what to believe and what to do, where life is from the outside in, where it's striving and struggling to get things to get stable enough so that we can finally relax. That's kind of the paradigm of the human condition on a good day, right? We are being pushed and pulled, shaken and catalyzed to let go of that and to connect to something far deeper, far more powerful, a miraculous level of awareness that allows us to connect to our inner selves, to God, to our destiny, to what's unfolding so deeply that we can actually catalyze miracles. It cannot be the level of change. And here's where I'm back to the beginning, and I'll stop with this. I mentioned that there's a speaker, if you want to check him out, his name is Zvi Lipschitz. I'm finding him really interesting, engaging, kind of schmoozes, but he says a lot of really worthwhile things. So this idea of being upgraded, of the metamorphosis, of what is the next version of each of us, what is What is a man? When God created man, Adam, name of the first man, which was male and female, we're all part of that, Adam. And Adam comes from two words, from one word that has two meanings. Adama, which means the soil, the lowest, the dust of the earth, your feet walk on it, has no shape, no real function. And Adama, meaning to resemble, Adama Elyon, like it's the divine soul. We're created in the image of God. Do your neighbors look to you like God? When you look in the mirror, do you see the image of God? I'm talking in a divine sense, holy, all powerful, all loving, blessing, creating the universe. No, not yet. But that's where we're meant to go. And in order to do that, our old wiring needs to be unraveled and new wiring needs to be created and absorbed, integrated into our systems, new ways of being. And this will come out in all kinds of new systems, new ways of doing commerce, probably, certainly new kinds of government, new things being taught in school, all kinds of new things. But primarily, what's new is that the truth will be revealed. And that truth is that everything is one, everything is divine, including you. And now, what's covering that up? What beliefs, what habits, what allegiances, what attachments, what fears? Many people are being driven into despair. I heard that the suicide rate is up. Certainly the sickness rate is up, and a lot of sickness is not coming from viruses, although some, I'm sure, always has been, whatever that means. But a lot of it's coming from fear. And from resistance. Resistance causes symptoms. So I'm going to suggest that with the remaining days of Sukkot, we sit in the sukkah, or if you don't have a sukkah, or if you're not Jewish, or if you are and you don't have access, just imagine it. Because this is an energy, a divine energy that's present for all of us and necessary for all of us. And what does it mean to let go of the roof? What does it mean to win in this spiritual war? By disconnecting from the need to have what you thought you needed to have on a physical level. Disconnecting from the illusion of safety that our structures and our institutions and the normalcy bias give to us. And start connecting instead to something far more fluid, more vast, more infinite, more supernatural, miraculous, divine. And that's really what it's about. And I mean it most seriously. It's not easy. It's not easy. We're really wired to a linear reality. We're wired to the roof. But the more we are willing, the more we consciously, and we have consciousness, Adama Elyon, we have level upon level of consciousness. And the Torah is divine consciousness that we can make our own. And through making it our own, we activate the consciousness and awareness of the soul more and more. People's powers are coming online. I'd love to hear from you. Are you able to sense things, see things, do things, know things that you couldn't before? And I suspect for most of many people here, the answer is yes. Because the soul, like it or not, is coming online. But it's a bumpy process. And now with the new year, let's make it as smooth as we can by aligning ourselves with it. Okay, by consciously choosing to let go of the roof. By consciously choosing to embrace the meltdown when it comes. The change. By realizing that this isn't, not asking the question, why is God doing this? Why is this happening? But to understand that it's a divine process, that it had to be like the 40 years in the desert, but that it is coming out in a way that is as gentle, or at least is the most gentle of the options that have been put in front of us, and can become more gentle as we align with it, as we become part of the solution. It can be more and more gentle. Awakening will happen. Freedom will happen. Geula will happen. Metamorphosis will happen. The birth will happen, but we have so much influence on how it unfolds. And you don't have to wait for the rest of the world. You be you. You be a homeopathic drop, changing the vibration of the entire system. That's really all you have to do to make a huge impact. Okay, longer as usual than I planned, and I'll see you next time. Shabbat Shalom. Chag Sameach, Moedim L'Simcha. Take care.